You are a 12-year-old boy swimming in the clear, blue waters of the Bay of Naples. The warm rays of the Mediterranean sun touch your back, and the salty sea breeze tangles through your hair. You and your little brother dive beneath the waves, challenging each other to see who can hold their breath the longest. When you rise to the surface, your hands are full of seashells, and on the shore, your father smiles with pride. This is your world, simple, pure, filled with laughter and the endless rhythm of the sea. But in a single moment, everything changes. On the horizon, 3 imperial ships appear, their purple sails glinting with the golden eagle of Romith symbol of the empire. Your father's face turns pale as parchment, because everyone in your village knows exactly what those ships mean. Emperor Tiberius is collecting. Again, you don't know it yet, but your extraordinary swimming skill has just opened the gates of your captivity. For weeks, soldiers have been watching you, noting how long you can stay underwater, how gracefully you move through the waves. And you have no idea that when you wake up tomorrow, you will no longer be in your home, but in a cold marble chamber, on a distant island, among boys whose names, faces, and stories have already been erased. Before the sun sets tonight, the boy who once gathered seashells will be gone. In his place, something else will be born, one of Tiberius's little fishes, a boy trained to satisfy the emperor's blind desires in ways so unspeakable that even the gods would lower their eyes in shame. You are about to become a Minuin, the private pools of the most powerful man on earth, where blue waters are no longer paradise, but a mirror of hell. And the horrors waiting for you there will haunt you until your dying breath. But this is only the beginning. The darkness of this story has only just begun to unfold. If you wish to uncover the hidden sides of history, the truths the world buried centuries ago, then like this video, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Tiberius Julius Caesar Augustus wasn't always a monster. When he became emperor in 14 AD, the people of Rome believed a golden age had begun. He was intelligent, educated, experienced, and loyal, but power, when absolute, awakens the darkness hidden within every soul. By 30 AD, something had broken inside Tiberius. He left Rome behind, retreating with a small circle of servants to the island of Capri. Officially, it was to rest and recover his health, but in truth it marked the beginning of one of the darkest chapters in human history where marble palaces turned into a system of organized hell. Capri was his perfect paradise of sin, a fortress island, surrounded by raging seas and towering cliffs, no escape possible. Ships could only approach during calm weather, and every vessel was watched by imperial guards. What happened on Capri stayed on Capri. The emperor's villa was like an entire city: rooms, gardens, and most of all, secret pools carved into solid rock. These weren't ordinary baths. They were chambers of desire and control. Some shallow enough for children to stand in, others deep enough for underwater performances. Underground tunnels connected the pools so that screams would never reach the air. This was no act of random cruelty. It was a calculated, methodical, and horrifying system disguised under the name of royal luxury. The emperor had discovered that the derived pleasure from boys who could stay underwater for long periods. At first, it was indulgence, then it became obsession, and obsession that consumed hundreds of young lives. The selection process was deliberate and terrifying. Imperial agents roamed the coastal towns, pretending to be on official business, but in truth, they were hunting for children who loved the sea, boys who could swim for hours, whose graceful bodies moved like water itself, unaware that within them, a tyrant saw the reflection of his own depravity. Boys between the ages of 8 and 14, their faces innocent yet striking, and lungs strong enough to hold their breath underwater for 2 full minutes. These were the qualities the emperor's agents sought. Those who met these cruel standards had their names quietly recorded and their profiles sent directly to Capri. This collection followed a familiar pattern across dozens of coastal villages. Imperial ships appeared without warning, carrying official decrees granting them authority to seize children in the name of imperial service. Parents who resisted were arrested or executed on the spot. and those who obeyed were handed a few coins, a pitiful price that could never replace a lost child. Your own capture was no different. Soldiers boarded your father's fishing boat, pretending to speak about imperial honors and opportunities for advancement. But there was a cold light in their eyes that tied knots of fear inside your stomach. They examined you like livestock at a market. They tested your agility, checked your teeth, and measured how long you could stay underwater. When you dove beneath the waves for 3 minutes and returned with a coin from the seafloor, a genuine smile spread across their faces. That was the moment you knew you were exactly what they had come to find. The journey to Capri took 2 days. The ships were designed specifically to transport children. You were crammed into a dark, airless space with dozens of other boys, each wearing the same look of confusion and fear. Some wept until their voices cracked. Others sat motionless, hollow-eyed. The older ones whispered terrible stories of marble pools, of boys forced to perform tasks their minds could not comprehend. They said those who pleased the emperor were given food and comfort, and those who didn't simply disappeared. When you first saw Capri, it should have been breathtaking. Green cliffs rising from the sea, white villas glittering in the sunlight, a vision of paradise. But as your ship approached the shore, beauty turned to dread. Guards patrolled every dock, watchtowers scanned every approach, and the silence on the island felt watched, as if every breath was measured. Upon arrival came the second selection. Imperial physicians examined each boy, testing swimming skill, flexibility, breath control, and what they called suitability for special service. Those who passed were given clean tunics and quarters within the villa. Those who failed their screams were never heard again. The palace, your prison, was a masterpiece on the outside, but within, it was the fortress of evil itself. Every wall, every carved column was designed to serve the emperor's depraved pleasures. You were placed in a chamber near the main pool, marble walls, narrow beds, beautiful yet suffocating. The frescoes of sea nymphs and ocean gods soon became cruel symbols of mockery. That first night, you could not sleep. You listened to the sounds that would soon define your captivity, the gentle splash of water, and soft, unrecognizable murmurs in the dark. Older boys moved silently between the beds, whispering rules that meant the difference between survival and disappearance. Silence was safety, questions were dangerous, and the emperor's mood decided whether the day would bring monotony or torment. Then the training began. You were assigned to a boy named Marcus. He claimed to be 15, but his eyes carried the exhaustion of a lifetime. 3 years on the island had taught him one skill: the ability to anticipate the emperor's desires before they were spoken. He taught you the laws of survival. Never speak first, never look the emperor in the eye, never refuse, and above all, never stop practicing your swimming. Your life depends on it. The pools, once marvels of Roman engineering, had become instruments of torment. The main complex held several interconnected pools of varying depths, linked by underground passages that allowed swimmers to move unseen from one to another. The water was carefully maintained, never too warm to drain strength, never too cold to shock the body. Marble steps and platforms were carved precisely so that the emperor could sit and watch his little fishes swim beneath him. The true purpose of the training soon became clear. You were taught to hold your breath longer and longer, 2 minutes, then 3, then 4, until you could remain underwater for 5 endless minutes. A living statue, measured not by your breath, but by your obedience. You learned to swim in complete silence, moving through the water without a single splash, so that the emperor's peace would remain undisturbed. But the most horrifying thing was what you were being taught, things you could not comprehend. Methods no child should ever know. Holding your breath underwater, using your hands and mouth for acts your innocent mind could not yet understand. Your purity was being cut away piece by piece, with surgical precision, until your soul was no longer your own. The first time you were summoned for personal service, you thought you would die of fear. Tiberius reclined on a marble platform that extended over the main pool. His aging body rested on silk cushions surrounded by the rising steam of warm water. He looked like an overfed spider, resting comfortably at the center of his web, his eyes cold and predatory, observing the boys chosen for his afternoon entertainment. Marcus had whispered instructions to you for weeks, trying to prepare you, but nothing could truly ready you to stand before Tiberius. The emperor spoke softly, his tone deceptively gentle, almost grandfatherly, as he explained what he expected from his little fishes. You were to swim around his submerged body in specific patterns, diving and resurfacing rhythmically. Sometimes, he would summon you closer for acts that made your body tremble and your soul recoil, but refusal was not an option. Your childhood was drowning in those marble pools, one breath, one moment, one fear at a time. This cruelty was not random, it was psychological and systematic. Tiberius had created a machine of the mind, one that transformed natural disgust into desperate gratitude for imperial approval. The boys who performed well were rewarded with better food, warmer clothing, and words of praise that in this hell felt like glimpses of paradise. Those who hesitated or showed defiance were punished with hunger, cold, or solitary confinement in underground chambers, where the slow dripping of water became its own form of torture. The horror was magnified by its disguise. It was structured, orderly, almost educational. You were taught reading and writing, given lessons in literature and the arts, trained in small crafts and tasks, as if you were a student in a royal academy. But in truth, it was an education in submission, an indoctrination of the soul. Sometimes the emperor himself gave lessons, displaying intelligence and refinement that only made his other acts seem more monstrous. The other boys existed at different stages of this system. Some were new, trembling and terrified, reminding you of what you once were. Others, like Marcus, had learned to survive by selling pieces of their soul. And then there were those who were completely broken boys who had lived for years, but were dead inside. Among them was Lucius. He had been on Capri for 4 years when you arrived. He no longer spoke, his movements mechanical, his eyes fixed on some faraway emptiness. During your second month, you watched him stop eating entirely, slowly starving himself to death. No one stopped him, because everyone understood this was his escape. Death, in Tiberius's paradise, had become freedom. As time passed, you came to understand the full machinery of the villa. It was not a palace, not a retreat, but a factory, an imperial institution dedicated to breaking bodies and minds. Every detail had a purpose. The architecture was designed to prevent escape. Every servant was a guardian of silence. Tiberius kept meticulous records of his little fishes. Each boy's physical development, swimming ability, and service aptitude were recorded. These logs were written by those who had once been part of the same nightmare. Every boy's life from arrival to disposal was documented in ink. One day, you realized the truth. You were not a person. You were a number, an entry in a file where your life and death were mere administrative notes. You were property, a breathing toy, a living object in the emperor's collection. As the seasons changed, so did the rhythm of cruelty. Summer brought calm seas and more arrivals new boys replacing the vanished ones before their beds turned cold. Winter offered brief silence, but longer and harsher sessions, as the emperor spent more time indoors. Your survival depended on a fragile balance between obedience and self-preservation. You learned to read the emperor's moods through his eyes, his breath, and the silence between words. When good news came from Rome, pool sessions were limited to simple swimming displays. But when political troubles arose or his health declined, the sessions became long, brutal, and unspeakable. Tiberius was now in his 70s. His age had become its own form of imprisonment. There were things he could no longer do. But it did not soften him, it only deepened his cruelty. He spent more time, demanded more intensity, and with that, the boy's suffering grew worse. Inside the villa, all of this had become normal. The servants, guards, and attendants were part of the machinery. They called it imperial recreation, as if it were just another royal ceremony. They spoke about your food as if it were just another line in an office file. Their voices carried no emotion, no trace of humanity. Over time, the boys built their own system, a silent hierarchy, a small society where cruelty and exploitation had become normal. It was so common now that no one even found it strange. Your 3rd birthday passed inside that prison. By then, you had already seen things that could break even the strongest mind. You watched new boys arrive with hope and fear in their eyes. You watched them learn the same rules that had already changed you. The light in their eyes began to fade slowly until only emptiness remained. They were bodies that breathed but no longer lived. Some boys adapted completely. They accepted their slavery as safety. A little praise, a warm meal, or a soft bed had become enough for them. And then there were those who could not bear it. They broke apart, lost themselves to madness, or chose death as the only form of freedom. Meanwhile, the emperor himself was falling apart. Tiberius was weak now, but his desires were still alive. Sores covered his skin, making every touch painful. He struggled to breathe and could not stay long in the hot baths. His stomach made him sick and restless. But despite all this, his cruelty did not fade. As his body weakened, his obsession only grew stronger. Your protector and teacher Marcus survived 5 years in that hell. He was clever and quick and knew how to stay alive. But one spring night it all ended. That day, a long session was held where many boys suffered humiliation from sunrise to dusk. Something inside Marcus broke. In the silence of night, he rose from his bed, walked to the cliffs and gave himself to the sea. His death changed you. You understood that breathing was not the same as living. If staying alive meant losing your humanity, then life itself was worse than death. The boy who once gathered seashells in the Bay of Naples was gone. Only a shadow remained circling endlessly around the emperor's twisted desires. Now the question was no longer whether you would die, it was how you would die. Would it be as yourself or as something that was no longer human? This story is horrifying because Roman historians recorded it themselves. After Tiberius died, the investigators who entered his villa on Capri found evidence that shocked the empire. The historian Suetonius preserved those discoveries in his book Lives of the 12 Caesars. He wrote that the emperor had created secret gatherings of men and women skilled in obscene acts. He called them spintrii and made them perform before him in groups of 3 to reignite his failing passions. Suetonius also described what happened to you and others like you. He wrote, Tiberius trained little boys whom he called his little fishes to swim between his thighs while he bathed and to tease him with their tongues. He even took nursing infants from their mothers so they could play with his body. These are not later inventions. They are official records written by imperial historians who relied on witnesses' documents and physical evidence from Capri itself. That villa still stands today. Tourists can see its marble pools and chambers, but no one explains what those places were once used for. When Tiberius died in the year 37, possibly killed by his own guards, the villa was sealed and its secrets buried. The boys who survived were destroyed in other ways. They were witnesses to crimes the world refused to see. Their minds were broken beyond repair. Society could not accept them, and they could not accept themselves. Some were quietly moved to other locations. Some disappeared forever. A few returned to their families, but their parents did not recognize them because those children had died long before. Your fate, too, was lost in the silence of history. No name, no grave, only pain remains. You are one of countless souls who were consumed by a man's hunger for power and pleasure. Your story is the truth that history tried to bury but could not erase. Because the noise of cruelty will always rise louder than the silence of time.